Art communicates ideas, really complex ideas, very quickly and in a very captivating way. I think it's really effective in getting people to really feel and understand, like in their heart, things that they might kind of know intellectually, but it doesn't resonate with them on a deeper level. These are postcards that people would send when they went on vacation from somewhere else. These images, these deplorable, hateful images of Black Americans were very much part of like popular consciousness and recreation. In that way, I think is really powerful and striking.
These images of Black children and people emerge in photography past tintypes. It becomes easy to reproduce lots of what we would today call postcards. After a while, these cards become popular and advertisers begin to do things like include them in their products. Like if you bought a sack of flour, there would be a card in there, and people begin to collect them and put them in scrapbooks. And sometimes they would send them to their friends, the way we think of postcards, but other times they would just collect them. Eventually, companies begin to sell them sort of the way we sell baseball cards. The presumed consumer is the Anglo-American person with enough means to buy whatever it is your product is. And that gaze is what's looking at all of these different racial and ethnic minority groups. When you look at images of African Americans, you see either humorous images that are meant to be funny, that often derive from the narratives of minstrel shows or the songs, the coon song, or you have images of the little pickaninnies or the old uncles and old aunties, rather than a brutal enterprise that is working people to death. You have the image of the plantation owner and his family are lovingly served by these loyal African Americans, of whom Aunt Jemima or Uncle Ben might be advertising correlatives. Part of the Old South image is that these people are essentially willingly and lovingly and loyally serving these elites. And on the other hand, there are these minstrel show jokes, humorous elements that are meant to be caricatures of either rural, formerly enslaved African Americans, or the zip coon, the urban, pretentious, free Black populations that become the most popular form of popular entertainment across the United States well into the 1930s, well into the era of film and radio, and even the beginning of television. These images range from things that were done in studios to things that were done outside to things that look like they were sort of candid shots of people passing. Some look very posed and some don't. Like the little babies, the little dark babies in the mounds of cotton obviously are posed because you had to take the child and put the child in the middle of these. But very rarely do we get to know what those people in the picture were thinking. We're talking about after slavery. So these are not enslaved people, but people who are like butlers and maids and people who are working in people's households, and you see pictures of them. So maybe they weren't physically coerced, but perhaps the implication was that if you're working here, you have to also go along with this photograph. In a number of actual advertising images, people were paid to be in them. They were often paid a pittance. Pancakes and Aunt Jemima are very much a part of this narrative of the Old South. The Moonlights in Magnolia. She's large and she's welcoming and she's grandmotherly like, and she makes wonderful food that is filled with love. Aunt Jemima is a person willingly stayed with her Southern family during the Civil War, and in fact helped the family hide the family silver from the evil Union soldiers. These pancakes become incredibly popular. There are other images that you see, the threatening Black criminal. That person exists as an image in the culture, but that person is never on advertising, okay? Because you can't sell anything with that image. But at one time, these cards were produced in the millions. They were on billboards. They were in magazines. If you went to the movies, there would be little ads in between films. So these images are everywhere. From the time of, say, the NAACP, which is founded in 1909, there are black organizations that are fighting these images. It's a society, for all its ideals, it originated in the genocidal treatment of Native Americans and the enslavement of people of African descent. White supremacy has been the reigning formal and informal ideology of many groups with access to power. And that's still true. In the 50s, really, and the 60s, even more so, is when these major companies discovered that black people are actually a consumer market. Yeah. Before this, they were irrelevant because no one thought that they were buying anything or had enough buying power to do any damage. So the consumer power of black people and other groups is what is different today. It also is true that they have more political power. New images get added, but it doesn't mean the old images are gone, which is part of what Hank Willis Thomas's work shows you. There are more ways to combat these ads, and that's what's different.
The proliferation of those images and stories that depicted black people as less than human, that depicted them as monstrous, that has impact, and we still feel that impact today. So it's important to see that documentation of this so we can be reminded that this is very much ingrained in every aspect of our culture and society, and we really have to be thoughtful about how we progress.